What is anxiety? It's one of those things that when it turns up, we kind of know what it is. And yes, there are many definitions, many synonyms used, many different ways of categorizing different types, diagnosing. But really, when we're in it, the feeling of it, I find more interesting in terms of tuning into what that means in terms of our nervous system. So this word unease that I've started with in yoga philosophy, in Sanskrit, there's a word called sukha, which means ease, which is what we're always looking for. And dis-ease is not being able to find that free flow. Unease is a kind of not being able to settle. And anxiety really plays into that as part of a stress response, as part of a fear-based response, which, as we've explored in different webinars, the trauma one last time, soothing heightened stress responses before, that stress responses are fear-based responses. They have to be. They're survival responses. So it's healthy to have our fear responses online, ready to protect us. And anxiety is when that is hanging around, maybe appropriate to a situation and maybe not. Often it's vestiges of stuff that is actually not appropriate or needed in the present moment. But like trauma, we're living something as if it were happening now. So unease, like worry, that can be with rumination, with racing mind, or fear, so vigilance is in there as well, can be mild, can be severe, can swing through any parts of the spectrum. And sometimes, for some of us, particularly there's kind of trauma from childhood in there, actually living in slightly anxious states is somewhere that we're quite familiar with. But it can come up and become something more, particularly when there's overwhelm, like loads coming into the system. Not enough being able to find a space, to find a room to come down from heightened responses, from being ready up, but too much. And too much doesn't necessarily come from something that's just something we would perceive as dangerous or a threat, but too much in terms of expectations on us, things to do, the idea that we won't get to an end point, to be able to have the requisite amount of rest, or stuff that we can't process. There's not enough time and space to be able to process what is coming in, to let it be digested and assimilated. So some of the terminology, the specificity, where that anxiety is going towards, might be diagnosed with certain titles like social anxiety. So that might be an anxiety about being around other people or going out into social events. So that really often plays into what we've talked about wanting to be more insular, or that with all filters open, it's hard work being around other people. Health anxiety can be specifically around our own health states, and that's obviously been kind of ramped up in recent years with a lot of fear messaging as well around us. And it can even move as far as going into panic attacks, into very heightened response where it is absolutely dominating the situation, and even seem like all of the sympathetic responses, heartbeat really pounding, and that complete overwhelm occurring. Also, so those things that might, a panic attack will often come with quite a measure of dissociation as well. Very, although it can seem such a large and present physical thing, it can also feel quite absent and checked out, like we're not there. And that kind of ties into quite a useful phraseology. This is one that, when I heard about it years ago, it spoke to me, which is that free floating anxiety hanging around, that we don't really know what it is we're anxious about, but it's like it's just hanging around ready to worry about something. And for those with who grew up in say, environments that weren't safe, and they're used to looking out for themselves or for others, often that can be that coming away from having to look out for stuff that's quite fearful feels in and of itself that it can prompt anxiety, because there's an unease about feeling safe, or being able to trust feeling safe. It's like the mind will bring something in or look for something to feel that more familiar tone of feeling worry or fear or rumination. And so anxiety can be something that's called more trait, something that someone has. It's part of their kind of, it's almost seems to be part of their characteristic, if you like, or something that's more reactive to situations. And again, that's not necessarily needing to place things in categories or boxes, but just giving you an idea of how this is kind of placed and viewed, observed. So can I have a look at more stuff that ties into this in the trauma webinar from last time, and going back last year, almost a year, to the soothing heightened stress responses that make quite a nice kind of triumvirate together to really tune into what speaks to you and what feels useful to you within these. So picking up from the trauma one, just coming back to stuff, we talked about that new vagus mode from polyvagal theory. Doesn't matter too much if you hadn't looked at that one. What that means is a way of talking about being present, being able to be here with an open point of view, in more reflective, creative modes that allow us to feel full body and present. And that new vagus mode is a kind of a neuroscientific term, being able to switch on our soothing vagus nerve in a way that's not going into a freeze response, but really is here, embodied in the present moment. And the way that we can do that, we navigate back to that, which is a large part of the somatic practices that I teach, like in the Tuesday, Saturday classes, and also within the therapeutic movement classes on Friday. That's very much guided by orientation. So knowing where we are. It's difficult to come back to the present when we don't know where it is we're going to. So it's part of our mapping, our feeling safe, is to orient, to come back. And we come back to the body, come back to the midline, come back to the breath. That allows us to ground, to be very, very real, really in the size and shape we are, and time and space we find ourselves in our body. So that's the opposite to being, or the polar to being not here, absent, checked out, which can be very much part of anxiety states. And that allows us to come to self-regulation, where we are able to come down from more heightened anxiety states into self-soothing modes, which is really switching on our soothing vagus nerve, which is that which comes down out of the brain stem and down into our organs, our belly, and talks mostly from the gut back up to the brain. So there are many ways that we can foster, cultivate these ways of accessing our self-soothing and having more of a direct relationship with us. Bathing, being immersed in water, and that actually, whether that's cold or hot, is something that humans have done long time. Swimming is something we do to be present, immersing ourselves in bathing situations. Epsom salts baths are particularly useful because Epsom salts are magnesium sulfate, so a large body of magnesium. Also sulfur, we'll mention both of those later in terms of what they can do to our neurochemistry, but it can be magnesium salts as well, or any kind of bath salts, or things that, lavender, rosemary, things that also help to soothe us, whatever works for you. Walking in greenery is something that we need all the time. So Epsom salt baths are something that we do as a therapeutic practice, but walking in greenery is something that is simply a basic need. We need to be in nature. And, if that's not possible for us, I have quite a lot of plants in my house. I like to be able to look out and see plants, go out into nature. And we need that. And that helps to turn on that new vagus mode from that sense of awe, wonder, being in as being part of nature, not separate to it. Creative pursuits also do that. That mentioned that awe, wonder, Going into creative mode, that time opening up and having that kind of focus that really moves us into creative tones in the brain, really switch on our ability to be present. If we can combine that with feeling every so often that we're just checking in, but we're grounded, we have our feet present on the ground, that's really helpful to really embed that in the nervous system. And then soothing speech and communication really helps us to access that, as we are pack mammals, and we need the cohesion of the tribe, and that feeling that we're safe. We have that safety for being seen, heard, understood. And so tones of voice that are low, slow, kind, help us to come down and feel like we're part of something that we can feel safe within.